What was your initial reaction to this line? Does it seem short to you?
Yeah, it seems short to me. I'm definitely going to be on the Niners here. And I was actually sort of handicapping this game during the commercial break. I'm already working towards the weekend, trying to get ahead. But yeah, I think this goes back to what we were talking about early in the season, which may not necessarily hold true because the Dogs have certainly had their days, as we've seen so far in the NFL. But when you talk about desperate teams who are very good teams in spots like this is when I like to take them. The Niners are 2-3 right now. They've been really injured, and this is a short number for them to go into Seattle and take on a Seahawks team playing its third game in 11 days. And also, as high as I was on Seattle before the season, they've had a ton of injuries on the defensive line. And the teams they've beaten, that came early in the year when they beat the Broncos, they beat the Patriots, beat the Dolphins with Skylar Thompson at quarterback. So I'm not quite so sure that this number shouldn't be larger. I'm going to be on the Niners.
Yeah, it does feel like a buy low spot on the Niners, does it not?
Yeah.
Especially for a Seahawks team that it feels a little one dimensional. I know Kenneth Walker III is back, but still, this is a team that usually relies really heavily on the passing game. The Niners have a good defense, and I do feel like the pendulum is bound to swing in the other direction because we've seen them lose quite a few close games. And I will say, most of these are two good teams. Like, you saw them lose to the Vikings, and I knew that that was going to be a shock. But now we're seeing that the Vikings are actually pretty solid. So maybe not as shocking as it once looked on paper. Then they lost in a really close game to the Rams. This is a divisional matchup. We know Matt Stafford certainly has history against the 49ers. So I feel like maybe you throw that one out. Then they absolutely dismantled the Patriots. And that's kind of what I expected. The Patriots are not a good team. And then the Cardinals beat them by 1 point. So I feel like eventually the Niners are going to come on the right side of this equation. And I feel like it's just a matter of time. And I know Seattle's a tough place to play. And that's probably factored into the number here. Like we were talking about how we think this number is a little short. I think the home field advantage certainly matters in a primetime game. But I do think it's the Niners that finally come away with a win and improve to 3-3 on the season. It's not a record that I would expect to see. But there you have it. The NFL has been kind of topsy-turvy this year. How about the London game? The Jags, home sweet home, baby, and they need a win. Just 1-4 on
Yeah.
the year. They are coming off their first win of the season, and they're going to be squaring off with the Bears. So Chicago short favorites here, laying 2.5, total of 44.5. Jenks, normally it's an autoplay of the Jags when they go to London, but the Bears have been looking much better lately.
Yeah, I'll take the Jags here. Why not? It's their home. Jacksonville and London. Two cities that go hand in hand. When I think of London, I think of Jacksonville and vice versa. And also Trevor Lawrence, when you talk about narratives in this league, there was that thing that went viral. Not viral, but a lot of people, I don't even know what constitutes viral now. How many retweets is it before it's considered viral? But a lot of people were sharing this video of the idea that maybe Trevor Lawrence isn't that good, but he was very good last week against the Colts. And I do think as far as a buy low spot, even though the Jags have struggled this season, I think this is more of a sell high spot on the Bears. I like the Bears. They're 3-0 at home this season, but now they're away from home. You're getting a Jags team that kind of put it together last week, got an important win against the Colts. So give me the Jags here.
Yeah, I think when it comes to London games, I just stay completely away. I don't really like the games that are international. I feel like chaos is always afoot. So I will be bowing out of that one. So, what's the read here on OU and Texas?
So I feel like Jenks can attest to this better than I can, but I always feel like when we get ready for Red River, I feel like there's always one team that's on the incline and there's one team that's trending downward, right? Like it never feels like these two teams are coming in hot or both teams are coming in cold. Like it feels like one team's playing well and the other isn't playing well. And obviously we have that in this game as well. Texas is undefeated. They're number one. Oklahoma has suffered a tough loss. Their offense is still not all very good, but you're getting 14.5 points in this game. 9 of the last 10 games in this series, excluding the Big 12 championship, when you're just talking about the game in the regular season, have been decided by 8 points or less. These games are always close. They always come down to the wire. You have to worry. Both teams coming off their bye week. You know Oklahoma, all their preparation was towards Texas, right? If you beat Texas as the number one team, that's going to sit well with a lot of boosters with Brett Venables. Meanwhile, we know Texas has Georgia on deck, right? So how serious are they taking this Oklahoma game? Is there a little bit of look ahead? Are they saving certain plays for the Georgia game? I just know that Oklahoma is treating this like their Super Bowl. Texas, maybe a little bit of look ahead with Georgia, getting a lot of points in a rivalry game. And I just feel like every time these two teams play, the team coming into this matchup that hasn't been so great tends to play very well in this game. So a lot of points. I think Texas wins a close one, but I'll take all those points with Oklahoma plus 14.5.
I think it's a fair, absolutely fair way to look at this game because Oklahoma gets up for this game, like even more so than Texas does because it's so much of their identity, if you will, because it's Oklahoma, right? They don't have a lot of pro teams and Oklahoma dominates the state. So as much as I love Texas, I actually think that's a very good handicap. 14.5 seems like a lot. Penn State USC, and here are the Nittany Lions who have kind of snuck up all of a sudden right here amongst the top 5-6 teams in the country, and USC has faltered under Lincoln Riley again. What is your take here?
I think Penn State's on upset alert this week, guys. I like USC plus the points. I'd take some money line as well at plus 180. It's always an auto bet for me in college football when we get a marquee matchup like this. And before one of the teams loses outright like USC did last week to Minnesota, and then you back that team the following week. They always play well in those certain situations. The look-ahead line was 3.5. Now we're getting 5.5 out of USC. Trojans could very easily be undefeated this year. They should have beaten Michigan. They should have beaten Minnesota last week. And here's a great stat for you guys. We all wondered, obviously with the expansion of the Big Ten and these West Coast teams joining the conference, what it would look like when they had to travel across different time zones. Teams this season that have had to travel against through time zones where the difference is 2 or 3 hours, 1-7 straight up. The only win this year has been Indiana traveling out to UCLA. So when you've gotten these long road trips where teams have had to travel from the East Coast to Mountain Time or Central Time or excuse me, Pacific Time, whatever it may be, they tend to really struggle. I like USC in this matchup. Plus, it's James Franklin in a big game as a favorite, right? So we know that it tends to struggle a little bit in those games. I'll take USC.
If David was here, he'd be so mad right now. But next up, let's go to another rivalry game, which sometimes I feel like people don't realize that this is a rivalry game. But when I was growing up, Florida-Tennessee was the premier rivalry game in the SEC. So maybe it doesn't have those same vibes anymore. But like you were saying with the Oklahoma and Texas rivalry, where both teams look to be trending in opposite directions. I know Tennessee just lost, but on paper they do look like the much better team here. But what's the X factor in this game, and how are you playing this?
Yeah, they got to get Nico going, Chelsea. They really do. The more I watch Tennessee, the less I like them because Nico's got all the talent in the world, but he's missing a lot of throws, and they're not clicking offensively. Now, they run the ball very well. Their defensive line is excellent. Their secondary is still a question mark, and they haven't played a quarterback yet that has challenged their secondary, and they're not going to get that this week in Florida either. So I think this is a nice bounce-back spot for Tennessee. Now, if this game was in the Swamp, it would be extremely interesting because Florida's only won twice there in the last 50 years, which is just insane. They can't win in Gainesville, but they can win in Knoxville. They're very good at home. Yes, they have Bama next week, so you do worry about that a little bit, but I think coming off a loss, this team will be ready. Like you said, Chelsea, big rivalry game. I'd lay the 15.5 with Tennessee.